Hi guys, welcome to our webinar on Site Designer, which is a Revit extension or an add-in if you might say. My name is Alyssa Jairus and I will be presenting the content to you today. So let's just take a look at some of the agenda and who is Baker Baines if you don't know. So there's a bit of something about us in here. So we are currently a gold partner of Autodesk, and we basically do the reselling of licenses and offer services and support to anyone that might need it. And we also offer a few other services like CAD learning, which is really cool, and civil site design. All right. So at Baker Baines, we believe in designing a better world, in delivering a better project or product, and in technology adoption and to produce results. Okay, so let's get on to the agenda. All right, so what is Site Designer? So we're going to go through what exactly it is. We're going to touch on the benefits of Site Designer and also where can you find it. So the kind of general topics of, you know, if you don't know, if you haven't heard of it before, so we can go through some of those. And then we're going to go on to create a topo surface mass or do a conversion, right? So we can also go through understanding the locate and modify tools, which include things like soft terrain and creating a street and a retaining wall and so on. Okay, we can go through some of those, and also we're going to go through, you know, what it is to modify an existing site element up in there, and also, you know, how do we add things like your street and your different site elements to make your site look a little bit, you know, better. So let's just hop onto that. Okay, let me just switch my screen quickly. All right, it's perfect. So as you all know, I often use our sample Revit project to help us just explain things a little bit better because it is a bit drawn up, so it's a nice example to use. And I am using Revit 2018.3, and so let's take a look at what we have. So basically, what is Site Designer? So if you can just lift your eyes to the top there in the ribbon, you can see that Site Designer is an extension. It's got its own little tab there, but you obviously need to install this first. And what it basically is, it just allows you, if anybody's tried to actually modify anything on the topography side, on the site side with actual Revit tools, it's a little bit tough and difficult to kind of do things. So these extensions, or specifically the Site Designer extension, just helps you modify things a little bit easily and to look, you know, more or less correct. And so something like this you would find on the Autodesk App Store. So if you guys don't know that there is an Autodesk App Store where you can find a whole bunch of applications to kind of add-ons and things to help your application run a bit better or do specific things that you think you can't do on the Revit software. So that's why we have a little bit of these apps to just help you design a little bit better. So if you can see that there's a product store, and on the engine you can just click on Revit, and then, or you can search in the little search bar in there, and you'll notice there's a whole bunch of stuff in here, but some are free, some are, you know, you have to pay for it. I know Site Designer is free, so let me just find it on there. You can see that. There we go, Autodesk Site Designer, and it's completely free, but there's a whole bunch of other stuff as well. So it's a nice place to kind of just check out what's there and, you know, what can help you model a little bit better. But let's just jump into it right now. So firstly, let's just take a look. So right now I have a whole site going on there. Okay, that's kind of what's just given to me. Let's check out what the levels are doing, just for you guys to get a little bit better understanding of how the levels have been set up in the project in here. So I'm just jumping to a section. I'm sure if you guys need more kind of info on how to set up proper sites and build a site, then we have done webinars on that, so please go check those out. But right now you can see that the levels are kind of on 0 and going up to 6,000. So if I just click on my level line here, I just want to highlight something, so I'm going to edit type, and you can see that there's an elevation base, which is now set on project base points, but you get a choice to actually choose survey point. So the basic difference of those is, to sum it up, survey point is the actual sea level being taken as 0, and the on-site building levels that your contractor is going to use. And project base point is more of a kind of rounded off 0 point, just to help you model a little bit better, if it's a little bit easier to, instead of like handling that big survey point number. And just to highlight that right now, if I just choose survey point and click OK, you can see that survey point and the base point is actually on 0. So I just needed to highlight that to you in case there were any confusion when we were doing any of the examples. So with that in mind, all right, with that in mind, I'm going to go jump into my site. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the site view, okay? And why we're doing that is we're just going to differentiate the actual site designed site from the actual topography that's been created in here, okay? So before we do that, I just want to highlight that using Site Designer, there's multiple ways to use it, in the sense that you could possibly have, your land surveyor be using something like AutoCAD Civil 3D, and it's completely fine to bring into Revit by using the Site Designer extension in here. So you can basically import that, what we call a land XML file, from your land surveyor, and you could use that to create your topography. So it is possible, to do that. Alternative ways of creating a topography would be also using your mass and site topo surface general tool, or I've seen even people creating a masked site. So there's a couple of the options to do that. But basically what happens is that, these first two tabs that you see in here, is basically using what topo surface material you have to generate a duplicate of that, to host certain elements used on Site Designer. So basically what that means is we're not directly hosting these elements that we're going to draw onto our main topo surface that's been created in front of us. The extension just creates a copy and keeps a separate copy, which is great. I think it's great because at the end of the day, you don't want to be editing some of your you don't want to be editing your main site and ending up messing it up and then not having an actual site to work from afterwards. So it's nice that it duplicates it. So let's just kind of do that right now. So there's these two main tools in here. So you either set the base topo surface, which is what we're going to use because I currently have a topography going in there. The second option there is basically you going to convert your topo surface or mass into a topo surface. So that's not something that we're going to use right now. We're going to kind of use that setting the base topo surface. So just I'm going to select that, okay, and it's going to tell me that, hey, I've identified such and such a surface on the phase created in working drawings, and do I want to select that, or do I want to pick something specific? And I can just go ahead and say, okay, I do want to use that to create a duplicate site. So let's create that, and what the warning is just telling me in here is that if I have any building pads, what it's going to do is I could kind of duplicate those building pads if I wanted to, and it just tells me that it's going to affect my schedules if be it. So I'm just going to go ahead and say yes. If it really, you're doing kind of quantity on building pads and things like that for scheduling, you might want to just take a look at this. But let's just hit yes for now. All right. And then it's just telling me that, hey, okay, we've created this duplicate, and what do you want to name it? So it's named it for me, but I can go and like edit this if I want to. And there's an option to hide the original topo surface in the view that I'm in, which is quite cool. All right, so I'm not going to click that yet. I just want to show you that they've created two sides. So let's hit apply, and it just creates a duplicate surface, and I'm just going to hit OK. Right, and so if I just hover over, you can see that there's one in there, but it's kind of like choppy. We can see that that's the proposed topo surface that has been created, that has been made. So if I just hover over my site and just hit tab, so tab is a little shortcut if you want to tab and cycle through elements that multiple elements that are over each other. So I hit tab and I just click that, and you can see that this is kind of the original site that I've selected with the contours being highlighted and stuff because that one's not named. And I can go ahead and name this and say this is the original, just so that we don't get confused. All right, but essentially, I'm on a normal site plan, so I want to duplicate this view, and I'm going to say we're detailing. So I copy over all the tags and stuff. And then I can rename this to say that, hey, this is, site from Site Designer. So, you can name it whatever you need to, just as long as you can differentiate, which is your main site and your Site Designer site. So I'm just going to hide the original site in here. I'm just going to cycle through it. And I'm going to hide that original site in there. And essentially, let's just check that. This is the proposed topo surface. And in my usual site plan, I can just now hide the proposed topo surface. Okay, so this is my Site Designer site. That's exactly the same. And that's my normal original site in there. All right, so essentially we want to work on the Site Designer site and then kind of see what happens. Okay, so what we see there on the top there is your locate and your modify panel. So basically your locate panel is it kind of allows you to add these kind of elements in here. Okay, not all of them are kind of an add element, the general soft terrain, feature line, and all of these are kind of to change the topo surface and what it looks like. But the point wipe out tool is used more for like, to remove kind of surfaces where you have been editing it and remove it to be set to original. All right, so with that in mind, the next panel on here is basically the modify panel. Okay, so in order to modify something that's shown in here, you need to have added it first. So if I click on soft terrain, it's going to tell me that, hey, there are no soft terrains in this model, and we know that because I haven't created anything as well. But so basically that panel is just used to modify existing items that you have placed already. So this won't work unless you've created it first. Okay, so let's kind of just go through something. Let's go and add something. So there's two ways of adding elements in these elements in here, and I'm going to show you that when we click on that. But before we do that, I just want to draw in a model line. So what these elements do is they host themselves on lines or on a model line, or alternatively, you could draw it in live. So if you had something like a CAD drawing that kind of showed you the kind of direction of a street, or some sidewalk or something that you can pick up a model line or a line, you could use that as your reference. Alternatively, you are going to get an option to kind of draw out your items before you actually place them. So it's a weird way of doing things, but let's just click on this model line. If anybody hasn't used a model line before, so model line is basically like a 3D element, a 3D line that you can use. So you kind of see it every kind of view, even in your 3D sometimes. So, and it works with levels, as you see that I click on model line, it tells me what level do I want to place it on and the offset from that level. All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and draw in, I'm just going to draw in a straight line. So let's take off chain and let's draw in kind of a line going from that end to that end. Okay, across that end. Okay, so I've got my model line in. I'm going to go jump back to Site Designer, and then I'm going to start the Street tool. Okay, so let's try out the Street tool. Everybody is always like, you know, it's not that easy to kind of model up. So let's kind of use it and see what it does. So I'm going to click on my Street tool, and this window pops up in here. So the first kind of option on the top there for me says that, okay, what's being used as a family is a sample street family. And when you install a Site Designer, it installs a library in there as well. Okay, it can't be really accessed as per usual. You can try and do it. It doesn't work, you know, that way. So it works through kind of Site Designer extension. So let's click on and see if there's any more. There's kind of only one. So I'm just going to show you where the library is. So if I just pop my cursor over to the little three dots, I'm just going to click and load family, and you should see the kind of file path that's going on there. So it's program data, Autodesk. It's got its own little folder with data and a library. So there's a whole bunch of kind of very generic things in here as per usual. So I'm just going to scroll down to see if there's any more streets. So right now I'm using sample street, but we can also use, you can see there's a sample street metric, which, you know, I think would be a good idea because often everything is an imperial. So let's kind of just select sample street metric or even streets metric, which seems good. And that one looks good. So let's open that one. Okay, so if I drop this down, you can see that it's now loaded, which is quite cool. So the difference between these two is just that that's the family name, and then you have types under these. So basically under the sample street, the different types would be just the two lanes with a curb and a gutter, as compared to streets metric would give you a little bit more of an option for different kind of ways of doing things. So I'm going to go with streets metric, and we're going to choose maybe 2 lanes with a curb and a gutter. It seems a bit complex, so let's do that. And then we obviously have to name the street that I'm creating in here. It keeps track of the families, so let's kind of name our street to street 1. Okay, something very generic. All right, so the next two kind of options in here are your elevation. So basically there's 2 ways of doing things. You can either choose to keep your elevation of your street that we're drawing in now as a relative elevation from the topo surface, and what that basically means is that if you specify a distance in here, it's giving me this crazy number. Let's just remove this. But if you want an elevation in here, it's going to keep that distance from the topo surface material to the street as a consistent amount of whatever I put in here. So let's put in a meter. So which means that even when there's a slope change, it's always going to keep the street parallel to that slope change or that level change on your side. All right. So the second option on there is basically the opposite of that, which doesn't work as per relative elevation to topo surface, but a constant elevation. So a constant elevation at a certain level. So example, you know, it would depending on your elevation, it would cut through your site or build up your street to that point. So it's just a flat road basically, and then the kind of contours and the topo surface builds or cuts its way through that. So we'll go check that out just now in a moment, but we're going to use this one first, and then we can try out. We can just look at that option there. which is basically, is asking you, is this a segment of a model line, or is it a chain of model lines? You know, so depending if I could have had like maybe the road kind of going around here and doing some crazy stuff, then I would have selected chain, and it would have created a continuous road for me without me selecting every single item on its own. So I can go ahead and select segment for now, because I just have one line in here, so it doesn't really matter. And the last kind of option, so the last kind of items in there, I'm coming back to create a copy, but basically what the to means is I can use an existing host line, which is exactly what I've drawn in here. So I've drawn in a model line to help me host certain elements onto it. So I've drawn in that host line, so I'm going to select that option. But the second one in there is basically drawing in the host line. So you would draw in the host line. If I click this, it's going to allow me to draw it in this mode. All right, I prefer the first method. It just feels a little bit more planned and calculated, because you're not kind of sketching on the spot, you know, trying to figure out where your street or whatever it is doing. So back to the create a copy. Basically what that means is that right now, if I just say, okay, I want to use my existing host line, and I select my model line, it's going to kind of eat up this model line into the whole element. Okay, you'll notice that just now when I cannot do it. If I want to create a copy, it kind of duplicates this model line, but it also adds in the street. So it's just a matter of you know, what do you really need this? And for me, I personally don't. So I'm just not going to create a copy, and I'm just going to select use an existing host line. So we're kind of done with all these changes in here. So I can click insert, and then you'll see that I'll have to, you know, select something, and I can select my model line. All right, it's placing the street in for me, and let's hope that my view range is appropriate. Perfect. Okay, it's kind of a simple, just, you know, I know the street doesn't even make any sense right now, but it's kind of just for the example. So it allows me to select it, it's generated for me, and it wants me to do the next kind of street. And if I'm kind of finished, you know, and this is it, and I can close. All right, so I just want to go ahead and just take a look at what's been created for us. So let's go to our 3D. I think let's just hide that other side. So just remember that we have that other side that's hanging around. So let's just hide that other side. Perfect. Okay, so it's kind of created a road for me, and what's nice is that it kind of shapes the topo surface around in there. Let's see if I can get a better kind of view of this. That kind of looks okay. Okay, as you can see that we've kind of created a gutter, little road with 2 lanes and a curb. So we can cut a section through this to see what it kind of looks like. And let me just draw in a section quickly. And I think this is the best part of it, is, you know, seeing this in section. Okay, that's kind of doing something funky. But as you can see that it's kind of cut through, and it's showing you where the middle lanes are, and it's doing like a gutter thing on the side, which is quite cool. Instead of using your floor slab to kind of create this and recreate this road, you'll see that you can kind of just use this extension. I think it's a little bit better. So let's cut a section through the other way. Let's see what that kind of looks like. Let's just go to, let's just do that again. All right, so remember what we put in? We said we want this to be a meter from the topo surface. You can see that's the original topo surface there. Okay, and we know that because we can see that's the original site. And then you can see that this is now like projecting itself like a meter off of that, you know, and kind of just slanting it for you. So if I had chosen the constant elevation, it would have just done it like kind of straight at one level. But we can go and try that out and see what that kind of does. So let's go try that out quickly. And I'm just gonna, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna delete this. So I'm gonna delete this road on here, and let's see if we can fit in doing one more element. You can see that I'm deleting it, but it's kind of just staying, you know, with this modeled in topo surface according to what the road was kind of doing. And to get rid of that, you're basically going to use, I'm just going to jump back to the Site Designer tool, and you're going to use the Point Wipe Out tool to kind of just smooth out the topo surface. So before I click that, actually, let's just draw in our model lines again, because we know it's a little bit easier that way. So just drawing in my model lines, let's put chain on, and then let's see, you know, what that does. So I'm just going to draw in like a skew. Alright, so let's just make sure that this is a continuous, just going to make sure that it's a continuous enclosed loop, otherwise it's going to be a bit fussy with me. Okay, so Site Designer, and let's just go and check out the Wipeout tool. Right, so again, we have the same kind of options. So I'm going to use an existing host line again and not draw in the element. Again, we have a create to copy, so we can kind of say insert, and then you can click in that. Yes. It's just going to help my topo surface. All right, so it's kind of brought it back to normal. Just perfect. All right. Before I continue, so I'm going to try the sidewalk item, or even the retaining wall. That retaining wall would be a nice option as well. There are a whole bunch of items, even if I don't finish all of these. I mean, it's the principle of how you actually use these. So I'm just going to click on the soft terrain again. You'll see that the window is exactly the same. So the method of how you do it and how you put in the information is exactly the same. The only difference is that the family changes. Okay, so the kind of idea of how you would use this, it's exactly the same. So with that in mind, let's maybe try in a sidewalk. Let's try in a sidewalk. Okay, so let's click in this. Okay, let's draw in our line first. I prefer drawing. Okay, we can draw the line in the other method, just for you guys to see what happens. So sidewalk. Again, you can choose your sidewalk family. Okay, you can see it's 4 foot. Okay, and let's maybe see if there's another one, maybe a metric one. Looks like a good one. So it's a metric sidewalk. At least it's something that we can relate to. And it's just giving us 2 different ones. So I'm just going to click the first one, and let's do the same thing where we kind of just rename our element. And let's put that to like a meter again. It's a nice size. Or rather, let's do a constant elevation actually, and then put a meter in. Okay, the constant elevation is going to work with the actual levels of the project from the 0 point. Okay, so this sidewalk is now going to be at a constant elevation from the 0 level, being a meter. Okay, let's just see what happens. And again, then we can just go and say, okay, I want to draw, you know, a host line, and it tells you, okay, you can click escape to enter. You have an option of radius returns. And so let's try drawing that. So I'm going to say insert. It's going to allow me to draw it. So let me just kind of draw that in there. It's all there. All right. That looks decent. All right. Click escape to press enter. Let's see what happens. Okay. So I'm doing some crazy stuff here. And it's probably because I'm, you know, drawing this way up on the inside, and the level changes is probably going to make a big difference. So let's take a look at what this looks like in our 3D view. Okay, you can see that it's molding the site for you. All right. Probably let's go check out there. If I just move that around a little bit, it's kind of doing something crazy there though. If you do see some funky things going on, you can always just edit the surface and just move the points accordingly. All right. You can always manipulate the site just how you do a normal topography. So you can place these points or you can click on points that have already been created and change the elevation to just manipulate the site. Alternatively, you could possibly even use your soft terrain tool to smooth out the edges. Right, so let's go and see what it looks like in section. All right, so let's kind of just go in, maybe let's move this all kind of there, and let's go see what happens. All right, let's try and get some levels in here. We can see our levels, that would be great. Let's just check out where these levels are. It's probably hanging out somewhere. I can't see them. Okay, that's fine. But as you can see, that there's the site kind of built itself up to a constant level of this sidewalk now being kind of a meter from the original 0 point. Okay, so that's the kind of difference between the two elements. And then one might ask is that now we have the sidewalk in here. So how would you actually even modify this if you needed to change something? So if I just jump to my 3D again, okay, so I'm going to scroll in here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the modify, and then I'm going to click, okay, I have a sidewalk, so I want to edit the sidewalk, and then so what it needs me to do is select those host lines. If you remember those host lines that we drew in earlier, it wants me to select those host lines. So if I just select the street, it's going to tell me that this is not what I want. This is not what I'm looking for. It wants the kind of model host line in there. So I'm just going to click OK, and then I can say, let's press escape. Okay, let's start again, sidewalk, and then I click the host line. Let's just make sure I'm clicking it. Perfect. All right, so it's kind of giving me the elevation, but we know that this is a constant elevation. So it's telling me the slope is so and so. The elevation is at that kind of point at each end. And then it's giving me this little window that tells me that I can modify these elements. I can either move or rotate it. I can add a vertex, which is basically these kind of points at the end where you can specify the height. So I could probably add a new vertex or delete an existing one, right? Or I can change the elevation. So if I click change elevation, it's going to allow me to click these points, the vertices. And if I click that in, it's going to allow me to change the elevation to new point. Let's do something ridiculous. Let's put in 2 meters in there. Okay, and it changes that point. You can see that the slope has updated according to what that's kind of doing in our top stuff, which is quite cool. So you would go ahead kind of editing and modifying your elements that have already been created from using these kind of items under the modify panel. But what in case you kind of want to just check out the things that you've drawn and just see, you know, what's the area, or if you need quantities or anything like that, we can always click on reports, and then we can check in to see like what's been created. Well, that says not applicable because we deleted it, but the sidewalk is here, and it tells you what the surface area is or the base volume and things like that. So if you need that kind of information, you can always get this and export it out. Okay. Alternatively, there's also an option to annotate, which is basically annotating your kind of elevations and your slopes that we saw just now in a moment. So we can tick all of these because these are now what's the elevation, and, you know, annotating those points in your road or sidewalk, whatever you're doing. So I click OK. It's again asking me to select coastlines. So I'm just gonna hover over here, and I can see the model line of the point wipeout, but I'm just gonna ignore that one. So you can see that I've now annotated that. So it's just gonna be a live text that's telling me what it is. Just maybe might be very helpful if you kind of sending drawings to engineers to show them what you're kind of looking at. if I just go back to my site designer, there's one more item that I would love to speak about, which is the family manager, which is quite interesting. So what this family manager does is it allows you to kind of select an item that's been placed in your model and change what it looks like. So it's not a matter of, you know, our usual way of clicking the item, editing the type, and changing what it looks like and what it's doing. This way is a little different because it is an extension. So you're clicking on Site Designer and just dropping down the Family Manager. And let's see if we just click on Sidewalk. It's probably going to tell me that there's 2 sidewalks, and which one do I want to modify. So I can modify the current one that I have, and I can choose to modify these elements in here. Right, it's got these crazy values going on in here. It's adding more zeros than necessary. But basically, you would change in the kind of pavement material in here, and this is picking up materials from your project browser now, and change values in the type name even, or even the width. Okay, we know the width is 120 centimeters, so it's being a bit over exaggerated with its zeros. It's maybe something that we should check up and see why it's doing that. But we can change the basic slope of the elements and what this is actually needing to do. So let's just cancel this. And I can basically check the sample sidewalk as well and modify that. This looks a bit decent to normal compared to the other one. So you can see that the sidewalk width is kind of 120 centimeters or 1.2 millimeters. And I'm just kind of taking imperial and taking that into account. So same kind of settings, and you would go and change in your materials in those kind of family managers and kind of set it to what you actually want it to look. Okay, so let's go back to see our summarize. I'm just going to switch my screen. Okay, so I'm just going to summarize what we kind of dealt with today. So we went through what the function of the site designer was, which is basically allowing you to model your sites a little bit better, a little bit easier than just using building pads and changing your building pads to slope, and then, you know, kind of just adding those elements. You know, I know people struggle with parking lots and adding parking to topo surface. So it would be a nice idea to go through the parking lots off of Site Designer. So it would be as easy as just creating a closed loop, like I did with the point wipeout, and then just selecting that lines, and it generates and creates a tarmac parking lot. But obviously you can just change that material if you needed to. But what's really nice about it is that it creates it according to the slope. So it kind of flattens it out for you and nicely, so that you can actually place your parking bays on that. So I think that's quite interesting, and maybe we should just quickly jump back and try that one out, just, you know, so you guys can try it out when you're actually doing it. So I'm just going to jump back, maybe do that example quickly while we still have some time. Okay, so let's just kind of remove. So I'm just going to undo. It's going to undo. Let's hope it undoes. Undoes. All right, cool. So I'm just going to see if I still have that other model line in here. It's not in here. Okay, but basically if we want to do a parking lot, so same kind of idea of how this works. I'm going to draw in my model line again. And if you had a CAD drawing, you know, a drawing that has been designed in CAD, and then you want to, you know, copy that or trace over that CAD with your model lines, that's perfect. I think that will be best case scenario. So I'm just drawing in a kind of an oddly shaped parking lot, and then I'm deciding, okay, I want to create a parking lot out of this, and then same kind of idea in here. Okay, except there's no elevation, it uses the topography. So I'm just going to maybe just leave this as it is, and I'm going to say use existing host line. So it needs you to have enclosed loop again. It needs you to have enclosed loop in order to pick up the surface or the kind of area that you want to convert. So let's just close. It's looking, I think the view range is a bit weird in here. So let's just maybe check the 3D and what the 3D is doing. Okay, right. So that's quite cool. So what's nice about this is that now, let me just change my consistent colors. Okay, it's like a flattened out surface that I can now go and possibly add in my parking bay. So I'm going to load family, and I can check out a parking space, but let's load in a couple of things. Let's see, parking island, maybe even an arrow too. And I'm just going to place everything in 3D because it's easier for you guys to see. So component, and I'm going to place in my parking bay. Let's check out the parking bay. Not picking up. Let's just make sure I'm level 1. Let's allow this to host. Let's try something else. Let's try my parking island. Let's go back to my site. And let's go click on my component again. All right, I think that's because it's placing it on level 1 and it's not hosting it onto the top layer. So let's just also quickly place it in here and allow me to pick a new host. Okay. All right, so always remember to use picking a host, which is quite useful. Okay, I know this parking island is way out there, but it's kind of giving you an appropriate surface to kind of use and place items on, which is perfect. You know, obviously you would go ahead and kind of change what your parking island would look like. But at least you can host elements onto that parking area, and just make sure you change your view range by using your plan views for plan regions for specific areas. Right, so let's go back to the summarizing. Let's go back to summarizing. All right, so we kind of went through what the function was of Site Designer and where to find it. So remember, it's the App Store, the Autodesk App Store, where you can get other apps. It's not just Revit apps, but for other software as well. And then we had, so what we basically did, what was our workflow was, we basically just installed in Site Designer, and then you would create your topo surface mass, you know, your usual method of doing it, and then you would kind of convert or set the base mass, so you're basically duplicating your topo surface mass, and in order for Site Designer to pick up that it's kind of a mass for them to use. So down there, then what we want to do is add an element. So in order to do that, we created model lines. That was easier to use. It's easy to use the model lines to place it into your site than drawing it straight from the locate tab. So drawing your model lines, get an idea of how you're kind of creating your context, and then use that as a host. So it uses that as a host. And then you would create your site elements, which is basically your locate tools. So things that we went through was you can specify what family it is. You can also go through kind of how you want the elevation to work, if it's a constant elevation or is it relative to the topo surface. Then what we did is we went ahead to select the host line, which was the model line, and then it generated the kind of site element for us. Then we went through modifying your existing site elements by selecting the host line. So don't forget that you always have to select the host line to modify an existing site element. So you can only modify a site element if it's there. So the moment you click on like modifying a street element, and if you don't have a street created, it's going to tell you that, hey, I can't find this in here. So yeah, so it's good to know these two items. We went through a couple of things, but it'd be nice for you guys to kind of go through like retaining walls and so on and so forth, and check out how the different ways of you to create a better context for your building or for whatever you're doing, be it landscaping and so on. Yeah, and I think that's it. So thanks so much for joining us, and I'm just going to take a few questions, if any questions. I'm just going to wait for a couple of moments to see if anybody has any questions. If I can't answer anything, I can possibly send you an email finding out more information about it. But I think it's a good idea of actually going through the different extensions that Revit or Autodesk does provide for us to see how we can kind of get our application to work a little bit better. If you do have any questions or if you have any topics that you would like to be covered, I mean, send them through. That's my email in there, and then we can see what we can kind of cover on that. If there's something specific that you guys are kind of dealing with, or yeah, so you can send it through, and then we'll see what we can do. So I'm just going to wait for some questions, and then we'll be off for today. And I'm sure everybody will have a great Friday. No questions. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.